Year 10 to your latest lessons of the week. A bit of a weird slide to start off with because you'll notice there's no title, and I've deliberately started with this slide because this was what I put at the end of last week's lesson, and I asked you all kind of as an extension, but I actually wanted you to do it, to go and log into your Seneca account and complete the assignment set, those 4 assignments there. Thank you to those of you who've already done it, but I'm putting this up again to start this week's this week's lesson because you need to do this first. I've gone back into Seneca and I've reset the deadline for that task for this coming Thursday. So those of you who haven't done it yet, this is where you start first. Do the Seneca task. Any questions? Obviously, you know what to do. Email me. Oh, sorry, if you don't know how to log into Seneca, email me and I will remind you how to actually get in to access the work. But it's ready, it's live, it's open. Do that first before you do anything else. It's a summary of all the work that we've done in terms of 1700 to 1900, in terms of treatment and prevention. So this next set of slides is actually what I want you to then work on for this week. And we're now in modern Britain, so 1900 to the present day, and this is the final set of work you're going to be doing. Okay, so we've been looking at treatment and prevention through time. We've done the Middle Ages, then we did the Renaissance period, then we did the industrial period, and now we're on the final period of time, modern Britain, medicine in modern Britain, with a focus on prevention and treatment. And you'll see that the objectives or focus of what I want us to look at over the course of this lesson is to understand the impact of the NHS. We've all heard of the NHS. It's doing wonders for us right now in terms of trying to lessen the number of people who are dying from coronavirus. NHS, otherwise known as the National Health Service. So the National Health Service was created in 1948. The things that you take for granted, the fact that healthcare is effectively free as such in this country, we're looking at where that came from and the impact it's then had on public health. If you think about the work we did in 1700 to 1900, you're talking about how cholera was defeated and how the government started building sewers and providing clean water. That takes up to 1900, but from 1900 onwards to the present day, it's the NHS that you focus on. What has that done to improve people's public health? And then the second focus, to understand how the government has then tried to help us prevent certain diseases spreading around England. The UK, sorry. So as ever, first things first, so I've given you some keywords. Go and look up what those words mean. Do not start before you first look up what those words mean, because some of the things that you'll do in this lesson won't make sense if you don't understand the meaning of those keywords. Right, so first, as ever, recap. Don't start looking at modern Britain and don't start looking at the present day if we don't just quickly remind ourselves what we've just been looking at. So I want you to go back and look at the work you did on medical care between 1700 and 1900, because that's what the next set of slides are focusing on first. And I've said what level of medical care was possible or available as we get to 1900. And I've said reminder, think about hospitals, Florence Nightingale, and think about surgical treatments. If you were ill, what kind of care existed for you by the 1900s? So quickly just recap that in your mind, because we can't go forward in understanding the importance and impact of the NHS on public health in the modern time, in the modern era, if we don't remind ourselves, well, how far had we got by 1900? What kind of care could you get in hospitals? What kind of surgical treatment could you get if you had to go into surgery? So just look at remind yourself about hospitals and surgical treatments, and just jot down, bullet points only, what type of medical care was available between 1700 and 1900. Get straight into the modern period. So first kind of big question I've said is, how did medical care improve in the 20th century? As ever, first things first, I always do this. Watch the clip first. You don't need to read anything. You don't need to do anything. Watch the clip. The clip will be in the description on the YouTube page. Watch that clip first. It's about 9 minutes long and it tells you all about the foundation of the National Health Service, NHS, and what it brought to Britain. What type of services people are now suddenly able to receive when the NHS came about. So watch the clip, make your notes on the foundation of the NHS. Once you've then done that, second task, I've said, how did the NHS improve access to care for people in Britain? So access means like things that you suddenly are available for you, things that you have access to. So how did the NHS improve access to care? And I've given you a Word document. Read that and you'll find some answers. The video clip will actually probably give you all the answers, but read the Word document that I've attached in the email, and that will give you further answers to that question as well. When you've then done that, move to the last question. Why did provision of care not improve despite the introduction? Access is different to provision. Okay, so you can have access to stuff. I can have access to a hospital, but the number of hospitals that are around the country might be unbalanced, if that makes sense. So I'm saying, why did provision of care not improve despite the NHS being introduced into England? So how comes basically not everybody got things? So why did provision of care not improve? Again, the answers are in the Word document. If you're stuck on that and you kind of don't really get the difference between access and provision, email me and I'll explain it a bit more for you. But you're looking at the difference between what the NHS provided in terms of, what the NHS improved in terms of what you could now access, but how comes the provision of that did not improve around the whole country? So look at the difference between those two things. We move on to medical and surgical treatments that were introduced as a result of the NHS as well. So medical treatments and surgical treatments improved massively once the NHS came about. Okay, and again, all the answers in the Word document. So read the Word document I put here. I said read the Word document in order to complete the table. So what kind of new technology came about with regards to medical treatments and surgical treatments within the NHS, and what types of treatments were now possible as a result? So an example, again, lots of you will read and go, medical and surgical treatments, what are you talking about? Those of you who've had surgery before, we're talking about things like keyhole surgery. That's a surgical treatment that came about because of new technology, and allowed more in-depth treatments to now be possible. So I want you to look at what high-tech medical and surgical treatments were introduced in the 20th century, to therefore obviously improve treatments in the modern era. Again, read the Word document, you'll find all the answers. Then we move on to prevention. So the first few slides are about treatment and access to care in terms of the NHS, what it provided, what kind of like I say, access do people now have, what services do they have to the availability. Then we talk about medical and surgical treatments in terms of what types of treatments can now take place. But that's treatments. Then I want us to look at prevention of disease. Now the title says how much had prevention of disease and access to care changed by the 20th century. So we're doing a bit of a contrast activity here. So again, answers are in the Word document, but first fill in the 19th century. So in the 19th century, what type of prevention of disease existed? We've done that work already. Go back and look in the work you've done from previous lessons. What diseases could be prevented? How could they be prevented? So, for example, Edward Jenner came up with a vaccination for smallpox. That was an example of prevention in the 19th century. Access to care. Again, hospitals, due to the work of Florence Nightingale, they were being rebuilt. They were well ventilated, etc. So people had access to some form of hospitals in the 19th century. But when you read the Word document, things change in the 20th century, and things rapidly change in the 20th century. All of a sudden, there's better ways of preventing disease now. So I want you to read about them, find out, so what types of prevention of disease could now take place in the 20th century? What increased access to care did people now have in the 20th century? So you're comparing what went before in terms of prevention and access to care to what now happens in the 20th century. Answers are in the Word document. When you're listening to me explain this and just reading from the slide, it will sound difficult because you have to read the Word document in order to understand this, obviously, in depth. So pause it, read the Word document. You'll see the headings for access to care where it says improved access to care and prevention of disease. And all you really what you're reading for is an understanding of what change comes. It's rapid, but what is the change in the 20th century in terms of improved prevention of disease and improved access to care in the 20th century? So then we want to look at, so why did this progress come about, particularly with regards to prevention? Why was there rapid progress in disease prevention after the 1900s? Once you get to from the 1900s to the present day, there is a bit, and you'll see here I've put you'll see here where the highlighted section that I said, what is the overarching factor in this rapid progress? And the answers are kind of, if you look at the table, I said, I've given you the answers. Government intervention, so the government starts passing laws to help us prevent disease. Vaccination campaigns start being introduced to help us prevent disease spreading. Lifestyle campaigns start being introduced to help us prevent certain diseases. Now, even before you read, again, look at the Word document, the answers are in the Word document, but even before you read that, some of you should be able to fill this in. Think about vaccinations that we already currently have. Those have been introduced by the government to stop certain diseases spreading. Coronavirus at some point well, that's what they're working towards, but at some point they want to work towards a vaccination. And this is because governments introduce what we call compulsory vaccinations for certain diseases to stop them spreading. So after the 1900s, things move quickly in terms of preventing disease because of laws the government passes, vaccination campaigns that they introduce, and lifestyle campaigns. If you're thinking what I mean by lifestyle campaigns, stuff like sugar tax. That's to make sure that we lower our sugar consumption, because too much sugar leads to diabetes. Okay, so that's an example of the types of things I'm talking about. Again, read the Word document, you'll find the answers. And when you've read it, what I then want you to do at the end of filling in your table or however you present the work, what's the biggest factor playing a role here? All of these things that stop disease spreading, none of that happens without one big factor, and I want you to try and identify what's the big factor at play in the modern era in stopping disease spreading. And then last slide, essay question. It's not 16 marks, that's my fault, I should have edited that out. It's a 12 marker. Explain, sorry guys, I've messed this slide up. So that should actually explain why there was rapid progress in the prevention of disease in modern Britain, so 1900 to the present day. I have no idea why that slide is not finished. So explain why there was rapid progress in preventing disease between 1900 and the present day. And what I've done is I've given you 2 bullet points, and then I've given you a 3rd bullet point where I said third factor question mark. Because remember, with all 12 markers, you have to do three PEE paragraphs. All I want you to do for this, you don't need to answer the whole exam question. That's my fault. And what I'll do is in the email that I send you, I will clarify in the email what this question was, because some of you will get this slide and be like, I don't understand, because obviously I've messed up how I've done the slide. So I'll email to you what this question should have actually said. And all I want from you is pick a factor, just one PEE paragraph. So I explain why there was rapid progress in the prevention of disease between 1900 and the present day. You can either pick government intervention, you can talk about understanding of genetics. Some of you might say, why is understanding of genetics in there when this lesson that you've just put up has nothing to do with genetics? Think about previous lessons. We did it in school around when we did DNA and the understanding of genetics, and what did that allow in terms of preventing disease? Clue, think Angelina Jolie. Think about some of the stuff of work we did around that. Again, it will be in your books. Or if you don't want to talk about either of those 2 factors, introduce a 3rd factor that you think, oh, this one's important, you haven't put as a bullet point. So why was there rapid? Rapid means quick. So why was there rapid progress in the preventing of disease between 1900 and the present day? And I just want 1 PEE paragraph, point, evidence, explanation. And the explanation, always link it back to the question. Therefore, this led to the rapid progress in preventing disease because. Okay. Any questions with anything that I've said? As always email me and I will clarify it. Look out for my email to explain this last slide in particular, because it's obviously edited badly. So I will put it in the email. Thank you very much.